Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and today we're going to replace the screen on the Google Pixel 8a. Yes, this is going to be the glass and the screen, not just the glass, but I have a little special thing in this video to show you, so continue watching, obviously, because you want to fix your phone. Either way, the tools that you're going to need are going to be a razor blade and a pick. You may also need a playing card, but you will definitely need some heat. And you might need some isopropyl alcohol, like I kind of did, to make it a little bit easier to remove the screen. Ultimately, that's up to you, especially if you're trying to preserve the OLED like I was trying to. So the first thing we're going to do, and the main thing that we're going to do, is we're going to use the heat gun and we're going to heat up the outside of the frame. And by that, I mean we're just going to heat up the glass that's on the outside of the screen. Sorry I'm making that confusing, but ultimately we want to heat up the side so we can get a razor blade in there so we can lift up the screen, or at least start lifting up the glass and cut through the adhesive. For some reason on the 7A and the 8A, I noticed it's really difficult to remove these screens, like more difficult than like a Pixel 8 Pro or a Pixel 8 or a Pixel 7. I don't know why it's so difficult to do. But ultimately we're going to go around the edges, and this one is really cracked, so it was very difficult to cut through that adhesive. Obviously if it comes off in a solid piece, it's going to be a lot easier to cut through this adhesive on the edges. But I did use the isopropyl alcohol just a little bit. Obviously, you don't want to soak the phone because you don't want the isopropyl alcohol to get into the phone. You just want it to be on the sides to loosen up that adhesive. Also, I was able to pull out some of the adhesive as I was going, so patience is a game. This took like 15 minutes to do, so obviously you want to be as careful as possible. I recommend going up the sides to the top of the phone, making sure to be careful on the left side because that's where the cable is for the screen, but then focusing on the bottom portion last because the cable for the screen that wraps down on the bottom, that is going to be a very sensitive area and you don't want to damage the OLED. Of course, if the OLED is already damaged, I guess it doesn't really matter too much, but still you want to be careful and not really break the phone. So all I'm going to do is add heat for a couple of seconds. You don't want to let it sit there for like 20 or 30 seconds, but add heat for a couple of seconds and then maybe some rubbing alcohol if you can. Just make sure not to put too much alcohol at a time as the heat will make it evaporate, but still don't put a ton of alcohol, just a decent amount. Eventually, you're going to get to this point where we can actually see that the phone is working fine, but I was making sure that the OLED was not broken. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold it over like this and grab a pick. I like using a razor blade, but you want to grab a pick to get under this little metal piece and lift it up. Then with that pick, we can lift up the screen like this, and here is the display. Notice there's a little sensor that's still stuck onto there and it's not on the new screen. You want to make sure to move it onto the new screen. So the next thing we're going to do is lift up this little tape right here, and then we're going to lift up this gate for the home button plug. Just kidding, the fingerprint scanner. And we're going to unplug that fingerprint scanner very carefully and lift up this portion right here. That's all you want to lift up. Next, we're going to grab a heat gun and we're going to loosen up that fingerprint scanner because reprogramming these fingerprint scanners is pretty much impossible. I can never get it to work, so I have to take off the scanner and move it to the next phone. I'm trying to preserve the screen, so I don't want to heat it too much. You can see part of the tape kind of wrinkling because of the heat. That kind of tells you if there's too much heat or, not enough heat. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carefully wiggle this cable, making sure to keep it flat because the fingerprint scanner is a piece of glass, and obviously if we bend it, it will crack. So I'm just going to wiggle it like this, being careful because it is going to be hot, and eventually it just falls off like this. Then for the new screen, if you have that scanner on the new screen, we're going to do the exact same thing. Technically not having to be too careful removing it, but you obviously don't want to overheat that screen because it is a new screen. Then we're going to set the new cable in. You can actually see like the little adhesive right here, kind of line it up properly. If your new screen doesn't have that adhesive, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but you want to line it up like this. Plug in that fingerprint scanner and then push down on this latch. I can't get aftermarket or refurbished screens right now, and I'm assuming that this already has a fingerprint scanner, so maybe it's going to be like this, but in the future it might change. Next thing we're going to do is plug in the screen to test it. We're not going to put the screen down because we haven't cleaned up the frame, but we're going to test, make sure that the fingerprint scanner is working, and it looks like it actually is. So I forgot two things. One that I already said, one that I didn't. I'm going to put this little tape back on the fingerprint scanner area, and I'm going to put this sensor back into the phone. I recommend doing this after you clean up the frame, but for some reason I did this right now. And that's exactly what we're going to do next. We're going to clean up the frame with this razor blade, making sure to get rid of all the glass that's around the screen and around the phone. You might want to brush it off with a brush or, something a little bit more durable. And most people ask, well, how do I replace just the glass? Well, you generally don't, but here I actually removed the glass on the old screen because I am going to replace the glass. I may do a video in the future, so get subscribed. I end up making that video. But that is a pain to do. It cost me about $80 to start up, and maybe like, $10 to $20 per screen that I do. So it may be worth investing in if you plan on doing a lot of these, but if you're just doing one screen, it's definitely not worth it. So once everything's all cleaned, we're going to plug in the new screen like this, and we're going to make sure that the camera is clean, being very careful because you don't want any fingerprints on there. And I technically should have done this before I set the screen down, but I'm going to remove the adhesive because it did come with adhesive. You can carefully apply your own adhesive or apply glue like I normally do in other videos, like in the Pixel 6 or 7 videos that I do. But just like the 7A, this comes with adhesive, so we're just going to lift that up. And we're going to set this little metal piece back in, hooking it on the bottom and clipping it in on the top. One thing to note is there is this little sticky adhesive right here. You want to be careful and make sure there's no glass there because sometimes glass does show up and it will break the screen if there is any glass, so make sure that's clean. Then when everything is ready to be set in, we're going to line up the front camera with the little camera thing that it has on the screen, and we're going to push down on those corners and line up the sides and push down on pretty much all of the sides, making sure that it's flat and the adhesive is touching perfectly. If you have some clamps, you might want to put it on there to apply some pressure, but this adhesive seems to be pretty good. And of course, if you're gluing it, you want to apply clamps and let it set. But that's pretty much it. Of course, the fingerprint scanner does work, so we don't have to reprogram it, but the reprogramming process sucks, so good luck if you have to. Hopefully this video helped you out. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. And as always, thanks for watching.